and Leah is a restoration director at Point Blue Conservation Science. She's worked in the STRAW program, which we're going to learn all about here, for 19 years to bring communities and native plants together for the benefit of people and wildlife. She currently assists the California State Coastal Conservancy in managing the Novato Baylands, which encompasses Belmarin Keys and Hamilton wetlands, in addition to projects at San Pablo Bay National Wildlife Refuge and the City of American Canyon. So Leah, I will pass it to you.
Thank you so much, Emily. You can go to the next slide. So I'm just going to give a brief outline of some of the things I'm hoping to cover, tell a little bit about Point Blue, the organization, our STRAW program, how we're engaging with community, the site of Sonoma Baylands, and salt marsh to upland transition zones with native plantings. So the workflow of those and our native plant nursery. So Point Blue Conservation Science is a mission-driven conservation science nonprofit based in California, but we also work across Latin America and as far away as Antarctica. We were founded in 1965 as Point Reyes Bird Observatory, and science remains core to identity and mission to conserve wildlife and ecosystems under the threat of a changing climate. In the past 60 years, the organization has grown from just being a bird observatory in West Marin to an internationally recognized leader in conservation science. Okay. So the STRAW program is just one program of Point Blue Conservation Science, and STRAW stands for Students and Teachers Restoring a Watershed. The program was founded in 1992 by Lorette Rogers in her 4th grade classroom, and they were studying the endangered California freshwater shrimp and wanted to help the freshwater shrimp, the endangered species. After they studying the species, they learned that the best way was to create habitat by installing native plants. We have continued working with classes to restore watersheds over the past 34 years and have grown a lot. This is just a rough map of the areas we have worked in. Some of the services that we do, there's a range, but we're not limited to community engagement, revegetation, biotechnical erosion control, invasive plant removal, native plant nursery management, and just overall project management. Next. Some of the ways that we are engaging the community includes events and tours. We have regular volunteer programming, and we work with a lot of schools, kindergarten through 12th grade, in the classroom and in hands-on field trips out at different restoration sites. And we also do early career training as well. Next. Our early career training includes our community college conservation internship and our STRAW apprenticeship, and these provide opportunities for early career individuals in restoration, education, and conservation. We also partner with Conservation Corps of the North Bay. Next. Now I'll get into just one site that we've worked at that was pinpointed as a good one to talk about today. It has been a little while since we did the restoration, but I will give my best to overview this site. So Sonoma Baylands is on the north end of San Pablo Bay, which is located in the San Francisco Bay. And you can see up there, that's San Pablo Bay, and up there where the yellow marker is Sonoma Baylands. It was the construction for Sonoma Baylands to return it back to a tidal wetland occurred in 1996. So that was when the construction was completed. And it was one of the early salt marsh restoration projects in the North Bay. Next slide. And I just wanted to give a zoomed in view of Sonoma Baylands. This here is our, and highlighted in yellow is the levee, and they are a rather short levee of where it transitions out of the wetland area. And then on the other side of the levee, it's actually not annual, sorry, it's a different upland wetland system on the other side there, but it is separated by a levee. And so the levee area is where the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, after construction, seeded 4 native grasses on the along those yellow line, and then subsequent areas where the straw program has worked with in partnership with San Pablo Bay National Wildlife Refuge. Next. So I just want to talk for this site, the salt marsh to upland transition zone is above the marsh area, which you can see in the wet area, and that has since filled in with beautiful marsh species. It goes from there, and then this short levee slope, which you can see where people are working in, that is the focus, and that is what the transition zone is for this site. I know different sites have different transition zones where they transition out of being a wetland with tidal influence into another area. And I think in future designs, people are creating larger and longer ramps where it is more slowly transitioning, such as what Judy talked about. Next slide. So for the early plant establishment, Army Corps of Engineers seeded the 4 grasses. They had to do it in a really short time frame. I learned that they had 3 weeks to order the seed and get it put out for the project. So super short turnaround, and they tried to find as local as possible. And interesting enough, creeping wild rye was one of the species that was seeded. It took 4 years to emerge from seed. So just noting, it's not going to be a quick turnaround. It could potentially take a bit longer to become established, but it did become established. And overall, I would say that's been a successful plant out at the site. Some of the other grasses might have emerged early, but didn't remain. And in between all of the native grass that were seeds, a lot of weeds came to dominate. Next slide. Because of the lack of native establishment, aside for some patches of creeping wild rye, the San Pablo Bay National Wildlife Refuge saw the need to have a native plant nursery so they could produce their own local plants to be planting out on the restoration sites, including Sonoma Baylands. And so the straw program was brought in to manage the native plant nursery and community engagement. And the nursery is just, it's a really neat opportunity for engaging the public because it is accessible for all abilities. And it also is a great spot to have control over your seed sourcing so that you can get the local seeds that you want, and also reduce your plant pathogen that it produces that could happen through translocation of species or planting. And so we're able to control Phytophthora invasion, hopefully control our Phytophthora and other plant pathogens from spreading into restoration areas. Next slide. So for our plant installation, it's really important that you prioritize areas that have bare ground, as those are more subject to erosion. So just wanting to note that in terms of prioritizing where you might be working. Next slide. Weed management is really critical for native plant restoration success. And I know that all the speakers here have talked about it. It's something that is just ongoing. At Sonoma Baylands, there are 3 different ways that we use to manage fern weeds. The San Pablo Bay National Wildlife Refuge staff mowed along the levee tops to reduce flowering and seed set. And also it also mowed because it is part of the San Francisco Bay Trail, which is a public access, and so people need to be able to walk on the top there. In addition, perennial pepperweed, which is a spreading invasive plant, it has rhizomatous roots. This one was sprayed with herbicide within the revegetation, and that was sprayed with herbicide to control its spread, and it was very successful. In fact, San Pablo Bay National Wildlife Refuge has a perennial pepperweed management plan that is in use to help manage this invasive species. And in addition to those, the revegetation areas had hand pulling by volunteers and staff to keep the weeds out of them. Next slide. So Straw worked along this transition zone in partnership with San Pablo Bay National Wildlife Refuge. And a lot of different experimental treatments were applied at this site over the 10 years that we worked there. So everything from solarization to tarping with black plastic before planting. So solarization, tarping with black plastic, sheet mulching, which you can see students helping us out with here. We really have the students help with all different aspects of the restoration projects. We even worked to apply mycorrhizae and fertilizer packets to the plants to see if, and then against using that against a control to see if there was any improvement in survival of the plants that had those, and we did not find that. And we also experimented with mulch around the plants and seeding with hand seeding with putting rice straw and raking that in. And then we also experimented with salt spray. Next slide. Okay, so some takeaways that we learned: with the correct elevation, tidally influenced areas fill in on their own with tidally distributed species such as pickleweed, cordgrass, marsh gunplant. Seeding can be successful, but some species are slow to emerge. There can be incomplete coverage with gaps in the vegetation. And so because of that, you're going to want to fill in vegetation in between those areas in order to establish native plants. The salt marsh to upland transition zone does not fill in naturally. It does not have those tidal seeds, the tidal influence to bring in the seeds. And just other really important thing to note, areas that aren't planted can become sources of non-native and invasive plants that can spread into the native plant zone. So even though you might have an area established, those natives are really, or those invasives and weeds can be really aggressive and still encroach into your native planting zone. So it takes long-term maintenance to follow up and make sure that that's not happening. And so that's something that I think that's important for any property owner to realize is you can't just walk away. You're going to need to continue to check up on those properties and maintain them. Mulch was found to be a really effective tool to increase plant survival and reduce weed impacts. It helps retain moisture and also prevents and helps reduce weed impacts. Next slide. Some survival successes that we have is the planting palette of mixed forbs, grasses, especially rhizomatous grasses and shrubs, to provide a diversity of vegetation and wildlife habitat. We found that mulch around the plants helps, and pretty intensive maintenance on year one to allow plants to grow, and that includes weeding and watering. So if you really can get those plants growing and established in year one, they will have a better chance of making it into the long term. Next. So these are just some photos that I had that are from a while ago, but can just show some plant establishment that occurred. So just to show how much 1 year of kind of intensive weeding and watering did. So we had March 21st, 2011, and then in 1 year later, you can see we really had had the plants grow quickly and fill in with that kind of intensive maintenance cycle. Next slide. And same thing, I just wanted to show this one here. This is also Sonoma Baylands. We've got photo here taken November 27th, 2012, where we're just starting to plant. You can see in the lower area where the marsh is, you can see some vegetation happening there, but the upper really doesn't have much establishment aside from weeds, and the top is being mowed, but that what we're calling the levee, the only transition that zone that we have here is needing plants. So we filled in with plants, and 1 year later, beautiful, we've got a diversity of native shrubs and forbs and grasses in this zone. Next slide. So just overall, wanted to cover what is the time frame and workflow? Well, seed collection and plant propagation happen year round. So depending on the species that you're collecting for, you'll need to be looking out and collecting those species and then growing them in the nursery. Some plants can be grown in as quickly as 1 year, or even some of them might be even quicker depending on what stage if you're doing propagules, they can be ready as soon as 3 to 5 months. But some years might take 1 to 2 years to establish. So just noting you need a little bit of lead time to have your plants ready to go. The installation ideally occurs in that upland transition zone because it's so dry. It has to occur either right before it rains or when the ground is wet and it's raining. And we have less success when things are planted later because they just don't have as much time in the rainy season to be established. So ideally October through February. And then the weeding happens whenever the weeds happen, which is generally January through October, but they don't listen to our rules for that. So you never know when you're going to get them there. And watering for us is just during the first year when the ground is dry, which can happen in the fall, or it can happen sometimes in the winter if the ground starts to dry up. So unfortunately, weather is unpredictable. So we do fill in with water when we don't have rain to fill those gaps. And just wanted to overview the partners. The property was originally owned by the California State Coastal Conservancy, and it was managed by Sonoma Land Trust, and Army Corps of Engineers also involved with design, and a lot of other consulting firms that helped with the design. So I wasn't involved in that design. So I'm purely speaking here on our native plant revegetation in that upland transition zone. We continue to partner with San Pablo Bay National Wildlife Refuge over the last 19 years on different projects. And Sonoma Land Trust, like I said, was initially involved in the property there and continues also being a partner. And I just want to say that tons of schools came out to Sonoma Baylands over the course of working there for 10 years, multiple field trips, and students and community members have helped, and lots of funders supporting the project over those years too. That's all.